slightly happier, maybe even funny. It's about a trip I took to New York City. I went to see the, well, it was the Coney Island Film Festival. The point of me going, I wanted to see The Warriors 30th edition. If you know anything about the movie The Warriors, it was filmed in Coney Island, and it was the whole 1970s street gang saga. It was a comic book, etc., etc. So anyway, I bought Amtrak ticket, and I set off to New York City by myself in 2009. It was a great time. Anyway, all right, so, but I met somebody on a train, not met like that, but he was an interesting person. So anyway, sigh. This is called A Young Man on His Way to Somewhere Else. It is kind of a crapshoot anytime I take an Amtrak train. Not that I know anything about craps. In fact, I think it sounds like a venereal disease, but that's crabs, I'm sure. But I am no authority about that either, so it is a risk. You can get assigned seats, but those sell out quickly. Mostly people are stuck with the general issue seat, sitting next to people who also forgot to book early, or who simply were not willing to pay a little more for greater space and easier boarding. I met him, whose name, if I was told it, I have forgotten, on the way home from New York City. I had gone for a film festival in Brooklyn, and after which I felt lonely in a city too big for grasping. And despite keeping company with a man named Al, who seemed to be either Jewish or Italian, was 57 and hated Irish cops and loved black women. Al kept kissing me, but I never returned them, despite his smelling good and inviting me to his Manhattan apartment. In the span of a few hours, Al gave me a lot to leave behind in New York City. Anyway, on a Sunday afternoon, I boarded a train that would stop in Indiana 18 hours later. I had the window seat. When the young man got on, he was already on his cell phone. He was the only person I had ever heard who had a conversation that was interesting enough for me to want to listen to. He looked like he could have been in a band circa 1993, where interesting boys with thoughtful fathers and meaningful mothers got tangled up with girls with sexual, emotional, and criminal problems. These boys sought to fix these problems with acoustic guitars and literary references. He had golden brown hair that stood up in big curls like a woman's medium-length hair with a roller set, and he was clean-shaven. He smelled like middle-class worry and laundry detergent. From what I could tell, he had gone up to the city to visit a girl, a sexually troubled girl who sounded rich to me. I imagined a manse of some kind where this girl, too sophisticated for her own good, entertained lovers of various genders and who was stringing the boy along. He was growing weary of it. Also, the girl seemed to be bipolar, and he still cared for her. At any rate, his weekend over, he was going back to the private, highly ranked college that he attended in upstate New York. I imagined this girl left alone while her family was in Europe. Had he said as much? I cannot remember. At first I was annoyed because I actually do not like people sitting next to me talking on their cell phones, but I did not know how interesting this boy would turn out to be. I imagined high ceilings, heavy with chandeliers, wide traditional rooms where the wealthy family could force their design dreams into fruition at the hands of underpaid labor. I imagined this girl with a faux European name, Francesca Angelique, sitting at the head of a long table in a white-walled formal dining room, the diamonds in her necklace glinting in alluring angles, her long platinum hair smoothed to perfection, her fractured mind breaking and ricocheting out of control as she tried to explain her sexuality, how everything she did was normal and anyone who loved her would have to deal with it. I imagined her in a low-cut white halter dress despite it being October. Maybe the meds made her blood run hot, but was she even taking them? Francesca Angelique wore heavy eye makeup in my vision of events, maybe even false eyelashes. In short, she looked anything but deep, but she was into art, and when she could get her act together, some Ivy League university was going to have yet another hyper-fashionable, overprivileged student on its hands. And that was how she lured the boy, art. She knew art because she was drawn to its beauty. Her parents owned it, and it expressed so many things. Francesca Angelique was also skilled in sex, luring a shocking parade of lovers between her taut, unseasonably tan legs from age 12 on. The boy probably lost his virginity to her. Francesca Angelique eats the lamb offered to her and her guests by the butler. She is thinking of taking up smoking, but prefers not because of the toll it takes on the skin. Her lips are glossy and pink. She lets them hang open from time to time for effect, before smiling and snaring another victim. At any rate, the boy spent the weekend at her house. They got into a fight because the boy confronted Francesca Angelique about the nature of their relationship. He talked to somebody about knowing she was trouble and no one could make her get help. I imagine Francesca Angelique growing defensive because people like that never know when they are wrong. Finally, the boy is off the phone, and I wonder what the girl will do on a Sunday, when probably the most innocent of her suitors is away and upset with her. I wonder if she will plan a surprise trip upstate to his college right before the end of the fall term. She will be stunning in a cropped orange sweater and matching Diane von Furstenberg boots. She will try to make everything all right with her hot pink kisses. If the boy does not accept, Francesca Angelique might fall apart in a big way. Veins will be split, words of hate and betrayal scream. I imagine the boy and Francesca Angelique playing sophisticated board games, or at least chess, with a set made of real wood or marble. Do they even make those? They sit in a room with gauzy white curtains, floor length, and every word is an indication, an innuendo, a play on words that should not be engaged in if one is not at least upper middle class or at least supremely well-read and clever. I imagine their words as heavy as their playing pieces, the outcome off the board more important than the outcome on the board. Then I slept. Before that, while trying not to hear the conversation the boy was having, I looked out the window as the train pulled away from New York City. My heart sank a little bit, like I was leaving home. Ever since I was a preschooler, I thought I belonged in New York City. I thought I would go to the same high school that the guys from Welcome Back Kotter went to. That's true, actually. I thought that a potentially surly Italian-American boy with thick black layered hair and Brooklyn accent would come to court me with, "Hey, Dodie, we going out or what?" opening his palms for my answer. I imagined that my brothers had to contend with a world of statistically relevant male violence in subways, a la the Warriors, and would run or ride bikes to outmaneuver potential assailants beneath overpasses, between alleyways, with the Brooklyn Bridge in the background, and would stop for candy or beverages at a number of small neighborhood grocery stores run and owned by immigrant families. None of this happened. True, 2 of my brothers got into their fair share of fights and won, but Indiana fights are not like New York City fights, and maybe I should have been grateful for where I'd grown up, but usually I am not. Especially for those with artistic tendencies, places in the Midwest that are not Chicago are not particularly welcoming. Good citizens are expected to put the art away by age 18. You are no good as a worker if all you care about is art. So I watched families in a park running and playing and eating, taking advantage of the still warm early fall. I imagined my family out there, the sibling rivalries, the love of room temperature chicken and hot dogs. I imagined that I knew those people out there in the park with their big city existences, the crowded, culturally rich homes, the knowledge of subways, the ability to travel long distances without a car. Then I saw a house, a huge house. Dare I call it a mansion? It was long and white with a corrugated orange roof. I decided that was where the boy was with Francesca Angelique. One girl left alone too often in a big house. How did she get to the subway from out here, I thought. I imagined her and the boy in slick leather jackets out at night. It was all making me too lonely. I was leaving my people behind. At some point during our sojourn, I think he bumped me as I was waking from one of my numerous naps. We inquired about where each other was going and what we did and the places we had come from. He nodded at my profession. Then, when my head was back against the seat and I was about ready to play that game I sometimes play with myself and try to guess the laundry detergent a person's clothes have been washed in, he had a question and a confession. "I'm all right at English," he said. I was not shocked. I smiled but said nothing. "But I have always wanted to know what is the difference between commas and semicolons. I know I use them incorrectly, but what is the rule?" He did not know, but he had touched my grammar-oriented heart. I had been just teaching such things to students in the community college where I worked. Barely awake, I launched into the rules regarding the punctuation marks that confused him. I used the terms independent and dependent clauses and explained until he understood. He thanked me. "Thanks, that makes sense," he said. The voice seemed genuine as he nodded his head. I was pleased to have a grateful student. My mind reeled at the idea that his parents were paying roughly 3/4 of my salary per year for this boy to go to this near Ivy League college, and he was missing grammar fundamentals that he should have grasped in high school. I wanted him to ask me about what he should do about Francesca Angelique. He did apologize for being on the phone so much. At one point, he called his family. I told him it didn't bother me because I was sleeping anyway. He inquired about how long it would take me to get back to Indiana and why I had been in New York City. When his stop came, he reached up and grabbed his sensible, unassuming 19-year-old boy bag from the overhead compartment. The sweet, dry smell of his clothes overwhelmed me. His clothes smelled like muted pop songs, like people who make big decisions without being megalomaniacs. We kidded about running into each other again, somewhere in New York. I just hoped that he would make the right decisions regarding Francesca Angelique and understand that what was wrong with her was not his fault, and that no matter how good and nice he was, she would probably always be the same. After he got off, I turned back to the idea of sleep and tried accepting the idea of Indiana as home. I pressed my face against the window, waiting for the memory of the boy to fade. The smell of him made me lonely.